Hello everyone, welcome back. Sorry I was a bit away. I was working on a game and I can't wait to show it to you guys. So either way, let's jump into today's video. Tea milk with ice cubes and tapioca pearls or dots or however you want to call them. So as usual, I'm starting off with a sketch. It doesn't need to be perfect, you just kinda need to pinpoint down the shape. I used the symmetrical ruler to make a line in the middle and use different shapes to do the outline. Now this is not necessarily, but it's helpful for me, so it might be for you as well. In the end, you can hide these outlines if you don't want them to be shown. I did the same for the straw, and in this case it was just easier to draw it vertically and then rotate it however you need. Now since I have the line art done, I'm just selecting the outer part and reverse select and just use the bucket tool to have a uniform color. I also selected the circle, duplicated and made it another color for the liquid on top and a different color and on a different layer for the liquid on the bottom. And here on a new layer I made some dots just to test out the shape, color and size of the tapioca. Now you can play around however you want, but maybe keep in mind the size and the size of the straw, and just so they can match. And on a different layer I'm also testing out some ice cubes. Now in this case they don't need to be perfectly shaped, so it's okay if they have wobbly outline. And at this point I'm just going back and forth on the line art and selecting different parts to work on them more easily. So in this case I just selected the outer glass and started adding different highlights to it. After that I selected the inner glass, erased a bit of it so it will have that transparency, and continue with the highlights. I've also selected the rim or the ring of the glass and added a bit more shadow and a bit more highlight to it. And since glass has a certain thickness, I decided maybe the bottom of the glass should be a bit more thicker. So the good part on working with line art is exactly this part. You can just select different zones and just work on smaller size and parts of the object. So it might be a bit faster for some, or you know, depending on the workflow it might slow you down just a bit since you have to go through all these layers. So they're just different workflows, you just kinda need to figure out what works better for you. And again, if you're unsure, just try a new layer and test it out. Sometimes it's easier to just work on one layer, and sometimes maybe it's better to work on different multiple layers. And now I'm just adding a bit of details and going back and forth again with the line art and selecting different parts and just adding more details. I've also selected the line art for the glass that I did and added a lighter color to it. At this point I decided maybe it would be best to play a bit with the background. So I started off with darker background because the drink is lighter, so I was thinking it would be a good contrast. But in the end I decided maybe, you know, it's a happy drink, so let's go with a more pastel, lighter background. So at this point you just see me playing around with different tones and trying to see which one fits better with the theme. Well, art is all about figuring it out, so no worries. Failure is very common, so don't give up, just try again. And when you're unsure, maybe just work on a different part of the drawing and just come back to fixing other things that maybe don't look as well as you would like them. So here I've moved back to the circles and I just duplicated the shape, made it a bit lighter and use a blur to make it more of a rounded shape. I've also used a bit of an airbrush to make a bit of a highlight. Now I'm moving for the ice cubes, so I've selected shapes, erased parts of it, and just go around with a lighter tone and a darker tone. I'm using the lasso tool a lot, so it's really helpful in this case. However, you can also just use a brush and make it more painterly if you want to. So at this point, just play around with the shape. I would say try not to spend too much time detailing it, because we're going to submerge them in the liquid, so don't add too many details, but don't leave it with too few details as well. So try to see what works. However, if you're not sure, you can just leave it like this and just come back and rework it a bit if you feel the need to. Now I decided it would just be better to duplicate the ice cube and just change the rotation and maybe the colors just a bit. And here I'm just arranging them and see which one I like more. I left the liquid towards the end because I wasn't quite sure the approach that I want to take. So here I just selected the middle part of the liquid, or the tea, and just use a lighter color on a new layer and a darker color on a new layer, and use the smudge tool to make I guess a liquidy form. I think this technique might be good for coffee as well as maybe other drinks. I've also moved the tapioca layer into the glass underneath the pattern for the liquid, and here I'm just using the fingertip or the smudge tool. I believe in Photoshop it's called the smudge tool, to just play around with the shapes and make them less round. And at this point I wasn't too sure about the color contrast, so I just selected everything, duplicated, and just test the different color contrast to see if I like it. And afterwards deleted the layer because I don't need it quite now. Now back to the ice cubes, I selected parts of them and just erase them, or you can just use a soft eraser if you just want them visible just a bit. Okay, so going around to the straw, I just made a highlight and a shadow zone, and after that I duplicated the straw and added it into the object folder just in case I need them, maybe to edit or anything like that. Just have a duplicate of the object if you feel the need for it. I merged every layer and I started cutting the straw because I want half of it to be under the liquid and half of it over it. And I've also cut it once again and placed it underneath the pattern of the liquid and with a bit of transparency. At this point, just play around and see which one you like the best. And for the last steps, I added a few more details on the top of the liquid. And around this time, I decided it would be best to make a new layer and duplicate what I've done up until now. Merged it into one layer, duplicate that layer again and just change the contrast and maybe erase parts of it. Also duplicate it again and make the shadow. And I also went back to the background and played a bit with the tones there as well. After that, I went back to the original folder with all the layers separate and just selected a few parts like the glass highlight and just duplicate it again. I've also added a bit of particles and also duplicated the tapioca and added a few more of them and also erasing parts of it. At this point, you know, everything is kind of done, so I'm just playing around, making it more pretty if I can. I've also added some dots with blur, and towards the end I actually decided the glass might look better if it's just a tiny bit taller. So one easy way to fix this is to make a new folder, call it test if you want to, and duplicate what you have up until now. merge it into one layer, duplicate that layer again and start erasing parts of it. Now sometimes this won't work, but in this case it actually went pretty well. So it was an easy fix. Just a small little trick I sometimes use. And I think that's about all. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye!